This meeting is called to order. Roll call by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Councilman Fire. Here. Mr. Paschal. Here. Ms. Tompkins. Here. Mr. Varshaw's not with us tonight. Mr. Wagner.
Here.
Mr. Witzel.
Here.
Mr. Fisher.
Here.
Ms. Spiros.
Yes.
Mr. O'Reilly.
Here.
Mr. Handler.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Great. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public comment period. At this time, I will recognize members of the audience who have indicated a desire to address the council. Upon recognition by me, persons may address the council, first stating their name and address. The council may act on any emergency matters introduced by members of the audience. Are there any public comments? Are there any public comments? Are there any public comments? None seeing, we'll go on to item D. Review staff changes since May 5th meeting. Dan Connect, Director of Public Works.
Thank you. At our last meeting, as staff presented on some of those projects, you'll recall that some requests were made for additional funding due to inflationary increases that have occurred since the projects were first submitted. Just wanted to re-highlight those for you, and if you felt appropriate to take that action, you could adjust those projects as we move forward here. So in your packet with the agenda was a memo that summarized these proposed changes and had them laid out by department. So I'd like to just go through those with you at this time. So the communications department, you'll remember they had a project for Engagement HQ public participation platform. It was funded in the proposed CIP at $10,000 using the ARPA funds. Tom had mentioned at that time that the cost is now $12,000. He was asking that that amount be increased by $2,000. Which the increase would also be from ARPA funds. I'll pause right there and see if there's any questions or action on that item.
Any questions or actions? Otherwise, go on to number 2.
Okay. The second one was the low power FM radio station. Tom pointed out that that project was not included in the proposed CIP, but it was discussed back when we looked at the possible ARPA funded projects earlier this year. And ultimately it was not included on that list. However, he believes there's still an interest in completing this project. So he'd like that to be considered. The estimated cost is $30,000, and that funding source would be a fund balance from the 235 fund with the communications fund.
Any discussion? Any comments? Would you like to go on to fire department?
Okay.
Thank you.
You'll recall when Pete presented about the ambulance replacements, they were currently funded at $252,000 in 2023 and $276,000 in 2025. Those are all funded through EMS user fees. But Pete had pointed out that they are now those estimates are about $20,000 short. He was asking for funding being increased due to the vendor pricing increases. $20,000 in both years was the request for that funding. So I would suggest that be an action by the council.
Witzel, motion?
Move to approve the change.
Second? Handler? Any discussion? Please vote. And Steve will take roll call.
I would just call.
Okay,
Call.
okay, call the vote.
Just call and call. All ayes.
Okay, call all ayes.
Aye.
Aye.
Nays? Motion carries. Thank you.
And the final change had to do with the Wenzel Plaza restroom. The council did take action to advance that project from 2025 to 2023. However, they directed staff to come back with a proposal on how that would, how the funding change or the funding sources would need to be adjusted. And you'll recall that it's a project of about $250,000 with $185,000 in funding from the EDB fund, the Fund 205, and the rest from room tax. So the proposal from staff is that on the EDB funding, simply decrease the amount in 2025 and increase it by 185,000 in 2023. The balance in that 205 fund is sufficient to accommodate this change. Jennifer just pointed out that we need just to monitor that activity going forward in case any new priorities would come up to make sure that we can still maintain that balance. But essentially, that's just adding 1 year, bumping up 1 year, decreasing the later year, and the fund should be able to withstand that. On the room tax adjustments, you'll recall we have a set amount. It's not set. I mean, it varies somewhat from year to year, but we target about 165,000 a year in room tax funds that go toward parks improvement projects. So if we increase that in 2023, we have to shuffle some funding around that year. So the other two projects that are referenced there, the Brain Park softball field and the Wildwood Park South parking lot, all we're doing is shifting between room tax and long-term debt for those projects to balance out the room tax and maintain it at the level at 165,000 for the 5-year plan. So the summary of all those 5 changes would allow the Wenzel Plaza restrooms to move forward, keeping the same project schedule for those parks projects, keeping the room tax at $165,000 per year for the 5-year plan. And then the EDB funding would be more spent in 2023, less spent in 2025. So if the council would agree to that, then a motion could be taken to that effect. Yep.
Motion by Fisher, second by Tompkins. Any discussion? Witzel?
I'm struggling with the items you have listed, 1, 2, 3, 4, to figure out how the monies are shifting. 1, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. 2, you're increasing the room tax in 2023 and decreasing it in 2025. So you're shifting that money
Right
from 25 to 23. Number 3, you're decreasing the room tax in 2023 and you're increasing the long-term debt in the same year. And then in 4, you're increasing the room tax by 65,000 that same year, 2023. So I see 3 and 4 as basically being canceling each other. I don't really understand how that.
So maybe I would explain it a little too quickly, but by moving the room tax for the restroom project into 2023, now we overspent our room tax in 2023. So we have to cut back on the room tax funding or spending in 2023. That's why we're
That's number 3.
decreasing our contribution.
Okay, but number 4, you're increasing in 2023.
Right, because we had a gap then in 2025 where what was going to be spent on the restrooms was moved to 2023. So we're underspending our room tax in 2023. So that allows us to use less long-term debt in 2025 and more room tax in 2025 for the Wildwood Park South parking lot project.
So should number 4 say in 2025?
Yeah.
Yes, it should.
Okay, that's what I wanted to figure out, because that's where it wasn't making sense. Okay, thank you.
I checked and double checked that too, and I still got it wrong.
Any other discussion? So need to change that, or since we've said it out loud, is it okay?
Yeah.
Great.
I'll reflect that in the minutes, yeah.
Thank you, Dan. And we'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Dan.
I do have one more project to reference, and this one just came to my attention this afternoon, but thought I'd make you aware of it. And that has to do with electrical upgrade at the fairgrounds. So with our 17th Street reconstruction project, that has triggered some longer range planning at the fairgrounds and other improvements that might be on the horizon. And one of those has to do with converting some of the overhead electric lines to underground. And there's a lot of details with this one, so I'm not going to get into all the details, but there is a need to upgrade electrical capacity of a transformer that serves buildings south of the round barn in that area. And there is a plan that's been put together on how to do that. The preferred solution is to install a ground mount transformer as opposed to the pole mounted one, and then serve the buildings with underground versus overhead wiring. We've accommodated that underground conversion on the 17th Street reconstruction project by placing empty electrical conduits under the roadway that will accommodate the underground conversion when that time comes. But due to equipment delivery times, that underground conversion can't happen this year. The best case scenario is that it would happen in 2023. The estimated cost is just over $100,000 for that project. which we do not have included in the CIP document that we've been looking at so far. So this was just brought to my attention this afternoon, so I don't have a recommendation on how this would be funded or what the cost share with other partners would be. Like Wood County has typically been a partner in fairgrounds projects and the Fair Association possibly. And I don't have a good sense for the level of urgency. We know that it won't happen in 2022. So this year's fair will make do with the current arrangement. We also know that do nothing is not an option and that it has to be done at some point. 2023 is the preferred year. Could it be 2024? Don't know that yet. We appear to have a bit more capacity in our 2024 CIP than in 2023. I think we have to do a little bit more digging into when this would fit in, what the funding cost share is on that. But wanted to bring it to your attention as this just came up this afternoon. I believe the Fair Commission discussed it at their meeting today, and maybe there's someone who was there who knows more about that. But anyway, just wanted to bring it out there, let you know that's another project that's on the horizon.
Thank you, Dan. Yes, Mr. Witzel.
Is that a discussable item at this time?
I would imagine so. I think, as Dan just said, I mean, some of the details in terms of cost allocation among partners and all that kind of stuff is a little unclear yet, but you can certainly discuss it.
Okay, this is a significant need. The transformer has had problems. It's old. It has been apparently smoking at times and has had some failure issues here and there. And, you know, with power needs going up with the fair, I don't think it's going to get any better. It's my understanding that there's been a deal worked out with utility in terms of the transformer, but the underground wiring, the 100,000 is where it really needs to be dealt with. And I think from an aesthetic perspective, it would be nicer to have the underground wires, but I also think from a safety perspective, if you've got large equipment going through there and setting up for presentations or for demonstrations or whatever during the fair, that we really need to get those wires underneath. And I would recommend that that get put in as a priority. I don't know if Mrs. Tompkins has anything else to add to that since she was also at that meeting today.
Well, I guess there's been discussions after our meeting about how urgent this is. And so, Dan, I think you have the most up-to-date information.
Yeah, I have talked with the utility this afternoon. I talked with our fair director and talked to Justin about it. So I guess I have a little bit of a sense, but this is only 4 hours old for me. So I'm still kind of learning what's all involved in this project. But what I would say is that we're not asking to adopt this plan tonight. That'll be scheduled at a future meeting. So by the time we get to adopting the CIP plan, maybe I can have a better recommendation for you of how to proceed.
Yes, Mr. Witzel.
I would also like to point out that the area that would be affected is actually city-owned property. It's not fair-owned. So if you think of it from that perspective, there is a certain level of responsibility that we as a council have on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number E, review proposed CIP projects by function. Police and emergency management.
Okay. For the police department, we've got 5 items to bring forward to you folks tonight for your consideration. The first being a siren replacement. The sirens just run a regular life cycle in which we replace them every so often, about a 15-year period. The 3 that are up in this CIP is at Palmetto and Daggy, 5th and Sycamore, and also at 21st and Hume. The Palmetto and Daggy one would be in 2023, 5th and Sycamore in 2025, and 21st and Hume would be in 2026. This is $18,000 each time, and that includes the siren, the removal of the old siren, the installation of the new siren, and then the batteries that go along to make them work. The next item is the rubberized membrane or the roof for the police department. This has been adjusted throughout history of the CIP, or recent history anyways, because of the potential project of renovating the department. However, this roof was put in 1999. It had a 10-year warranty and about a 15 to 20-year replacement cycle, so we've outlived that. It's getting to the point where we've had to make some repairs on it, and with our project for the building getting pushed off and being quite uncertain at this point, I think it's time to invest the money into fixing the roof, which would be about $60,000. Our vehicles are probably one of our biggest assets that we have, and also the biggest cost. So we have to make sure that we ensure that all of our vehicles are able to respond and in good working order. Part of that process involves our investigative vehicles. We have been switching out our investigative vehicles, or filtering through our investigative department every year. What we would do is usually replace our undercover cars to keep them less known. And then with those undercover cars, we would filter them down and replace vehicles throughout the rest of the detective bureau. The vehicle's life with us is usually right around six years, or at least 6 years, depending on the amount of mileage that we accumulate on them. Starting in 2024, what we'd like to do is actually switch that from an every year process to an every other year. We think that we can help spread out some of the cost that way. Also, we would try that this year. However, because of the cycle, there's a vehicle that's accumulating quite a few miles. It'd probably be best to rotate that one out and then start the every other year next year. So that's our game plan with the vehicles. We've got about $37,000 in 2023, 38 in 2024, and 2026 is $40,000. This is really a shot in the dark due to availability of the vehicles and also the unknown costs with inflation. So we may have to revisit that. The next item is our ordinance, our humane officer vehicles. This one, this was meant to replace the van that we have. The van that we use for ordinances was not really intended for this purpose. Inside the van is metal crates, basically. They're extremely loud. If you take them down Man Road, I almost require them to wear ear protection. It's pretty crazy. There's a safety issue with them as well, because if you have to take a vicious dog, for instance, and put them into the cage, at one point you're nearly face to face with the dog because you have to go in the side door of that van. We had $37,000 approved in 2022 that we did not spend. Because after research, we found a vehicle that was probably better suited. So what we're asking is that 37 would be rolled over and added into this one. The vehicle that we're currently looking at kind of comes in two parts. There's a F-350 Ford pickup that is the actual chassis of the vehicle, and then the box is a separate one, which would allow our ordinance officers to put animals in from the side in a safer manner. That box can be transferred from vehicle to vehicle, so the lifespan of that box should probably last a lot longer than what we currently have. The prices that we had for the vehicle were state bids. Again, these are a shot in the dark, but it was $50,000 for the vehicle. And then I believe the $37,000 from last year would combine together for $87,000, which would buy the whole vehicle. And again, the lifespan of that vehicle should be longer than our police vehicles, and the box can be reused. And then finally, our patrol cars. Every year we try to replace 3 patrol cars. We have 9 total. Depending on the mileage, we rotate those through. We replace our K9 vehicles through that cost. Last year, I believe we, instead of the 3 vehicles, we did only purchase 2, which put us a little bit behind the 8 ball. We would like to purchase 3 this year. You're probably seeing the sense that our vehicles are really uncertain at this time. You know, we're not guaranteed to have the vehicles that we've ordered this year. We have to have the money ready for them in case they do come in. But there's a possibility that they may not, which will put us even farther behind the 8 ball next year. So the vehicles are budgeted, and this is pretty consistent with what we've done in the past. Those are the items that I present with you. With that, I'll entertain any questions that you might have or comments.
Any questions? Tompkins?
I'm just wondering, I know for the fire department, they have a certain amount of people they want to keep at the station. So with your 9 patrol cars, do you have a certain requirement of how many have to stay at the station, how many have to be patrolling?
No, well, we actually encourage our officers not to stay at the station if possible. We want them out patrolling and visible in neighborhoods. With the 9 patrol cars, 2 of those are K-9 officers. So those folks keep their cars with their dogs. The remaining is left for our patrol officers. We have 1 vehicle we use for transport. We do have that vehicle outfitted so that it can be used on the road, but it's an older vehicle. And if we have a full staff, the lieutenant normally would be in that vehicle. So depending on our mileage, we try to have one squad car per officer, and then we would rotate and keep one patrol car per officer each shift. And then as we rotate them out, if the mileages are a little bit low, we try to keep those a little bit longer for a car to take to school or that sort of thing, because otherwise we'd have to pay mileage to let the officers go to school. So we try to rotate them out. Otherwise, and in most cases, what we do is we sell those vehicles through Wisconsin Surplus.
Anything else? Thank you. Stormwater.
All right, we have 2 projects under the stormwater. The first one being West A Street Greenway culvert replacement. This is a culvert that's under the Hawthorne Avenue. It's a steel culvert that is rusting through and failing, and it is under capacity. So we're looking at a replacement with that, budgeted $55,000, and we'd be applying for 50-50 cost share with Wood County Bridge Aid. The second project is near and dear to Nick's heart, which is the Colonial Laird easement storm sewer. And this is a easement where we have street water running between 4 properties. And we've had this in the CIP for many years to enclose that and get rid of that drainage easement or the drainage ditch itself. And that's scheduled at $40,000. Are there any questions?
Mr. Peschel.
I just want to comment that I'd like to see that Colonial and easement project move up sometime. Every year it seems to be in the 5th year of the CIP. I'd be happy if it moved up to the 3rd year, maybe.
Trust me, if we had the money, I'd have to do it tomorrow, so.
Thank you. I know, it's not a good year to ask for money, even a small project.
Anyone else? Thank you. Streets.
Hello, everyone. If you're following along on your book here, we're on page 177 of streets. Each year we have annual seal coat and crack filling for the city streets. That's for our concrete and asphalt streets, and it also is for our surface treatment on the asphalts. Number 2, I kind of lumped number 2, street department electrical service upgrade and the tuck pointing in the CIP here together, because I want to explain this a little bit. We have that electrical service upgrade for 2025 for $75,000. Oh, sorry. For $75,000 in 2025, and the tuck pointing in 2024 for $100,000. There really seems to be some positive momentum for the new facilities, and depending on timeline here, they may be deleted. I'm not sure. Electrical service upgrade is, if it extends any further, we'll have to get that done though, because we're not non-compliant. The next, along with that, we did put $100,000 in for 2023 for the new public works facility. This would be to advance the architectural designs and form a formal agreement with Wood County and basically move the plan on and start to get down to the nuts and bolts of the facility. And then finally, for the street division, is our annual equipment replacement fund that you have with you. A couple of things I want to comment on that. What we're seeing with the supply shortage and raw material prices increasing, we're seeing vehicles pushed out 14 to 18 months lead time. on a lot of stuff. Pickup trucks, as the police and fire know right now, they open up a window, Ford or Chevy opens up a window, and it's like a week-long window that you can order a vehicle. And we're actually sitting and waiting for Ford right now. But if you look at my totals here, the 5-year total average is out to about 695,000, and that average total. In 2026 and 2027, we've increased that to $700,000. What I'd like to ask tonight is just to give you an idea of the price increases, and I talked about this at the Board of Public Works meeting just prior to this. We ordered 2 new chassis and we ordered a chassis in February, and that same truck, 2 months later, our local dealers called us up and said, hey, if you guys have anything planned for in the future, now would be your time to do it. And the chassis alone in 2 months went up over $3,200, but the steel and the stainless steel prices for the same snowplow package went up $12,000. So just to give you an idea, I'd like to increase the 2023, 24, and 2025 numbers to 700,000, which equates to the 5-year plan right now, averages out to 695,000 per year. With that, that does it for me. I'll take any questions.
Mr. Witzel?
Thank you. You're funding those equipment pieces out of the machinery and equipment fund.
Correct, yes.
And for those that are new to the council, could you briefly explain that? And then I have another question for you.
Yeah, our equipment, each piece of our equipment is charged out to a specific project or whatever we're working on for that day. It's broken down from a weed whacker to a dump truck to an end loader. We have rates that we charge that are follow the DOT rates. And daily, we keep track of each piece of equipment and how many hours we use it, and whether it's on street or storm or specific project, that piece of equipment is charged out to that project. And that's how this fund is funded, is through equipment rental rates.
And my follow-up question then is, do you have enough in that fund to increase these to the 700?
Yeah, I briefly talked to Jennifer earlier in the week, and we'll have a better idea, but she says, yes, it's healthy right now. So
do you need action on that right now?
That's totally up to you guys. What you?
In that case, I would move to approve to increase that as requested to 700,000 per year.
Witzel makes a motion, and Wagner, second?
I'll second the motion, but I reserve the right to talk too.
Any discussion?
Yes. I want to get in before Mr. Wetzel got another idea. But basically, the money that goes into that is basically we charge off a specific rental rate per equipment.
Yes.
How long has it been since we checked to see if those rental rates are accurate and if we're putting aside enough?
That's an excellent question. But since we've adopted the DOT rates, the DOT sets the rates every December, and we go through and check all of our equipment against.
So you're changing them every December. So essentially, but since we're using the DOT rates, that means you can't unilaterally raise the rates to replace, say, a major piece of equipment in 2 or 3 years. You can't raise, let's say you've got a grader that you think is about to give up the ghost in 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you're charging that out at the DOT rates.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
You can't universally change that rate to put aside enough money to replace that grader in 3 years. You can't raise the rate for use of that grader.
Correct. But most of our graders are about 20 to 25 years old, so they pretty much paid for themselves in the rental rates already, yes. But we don't raise the rates, knowing, like, for instance, if we were going to buy a 1-ton truck in 3 years or whatever, we don't look at the rate and say, okay, how many hours would it take to replace this truck? And I guess it would be difficult what would you charge it to with those increased rates?
Okay, I have another, but I never have another question for you, but it's not germane to Mr. Witzel's topic, so I'll yield the floor temporarily.
Any other discussion? If not, please vote. Ayes?
Aye.
Aye.
Nays? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, and Mr. Wagner?
Thank you. Who is responsible for maintaining and designing the crosswalks. Does that come under your purview, or does that come under planning, or does it, Mr. Turchi, oh, good, I haven't talked to him in a long time.
That would be engineering. I'll let Tom answer that question.
What's your specific question?
Well, Tom, there's, how much money do we have to sink into those crosswalks to maintain them a year? Do you have any idea what that is?
Are you talking like the ones on Central Avenue? Or,
Well, I'm talking, I think there are some on Peach that are, a lot of them on Peach, if I recall. And there are some on Central, in the downtown area. I don't see many down on the north end. Any.
Are you talking the painting?
The painting and the design and the.
Well, every time we do a design for the crosswalks or any street intersection that we do reconstruct, we're looking at a lifespan of 40 to 50 years for that design. The painting is sometimes done on an annual or biannual basis because it wears out a little bit sooner than that. So we're not probably putting in specific dollars on a yearly basis for each of the crosswalks. And then, like for example, at the Board of Public Works, we had a instance where we had a request for the audible signals, and we put those in that at the intersection of 7th and Central. So it's based upon more or less need, and
Well, that's, you're getting closer to where I'm going on that. I think one of the things that I've found in the infrastructure program is there's a ton of highway money, but a lot of that's going to state and federal highways. But there is money in there for pedestrian safety and trails, and specifically crosswalks. Can we upgrade those crosswalks with flashing signals? Would that be a design that you would be willing to look at if the money were available?
We have in the past used some of the TAP funding or TIP funding for for the school crossings for the RRFBs, which is the rapid random flashing beacons. We've done that. If you're looking at a specific intersection, we can take a look at that, but to just broadly say, let's do all of them.
I'm looking at basically all intersections in a zone. I'm saying, like, okay, let's talk about the downtown zone. The downtown crosswalks are especially dangerous because they're 4-lane. And we have difficulty with, if somebody stops to let a pedestrian cross in one lane, the car coming up behind him can't see somebody in that lane, and they almost pick them off. And I think we need like flashing, even flashing lights in the crosswalk itself to improve that.
Well, we did take a look at this up by the hospital clinic campus about putting in roadway lighting like they've done in Ashland and other communities. To do something like that on Central Avenue, you're probably looking at $20,000 or more per crossing.
Right.
And so maybe an intersection might be $50,000 for the work, plus you got to get power to it and everything else. We had the discussion with the downtown group about using RFBs in the mid-block crossings, but the recommendation from the manual and uniform traffic control devices and the Federal Highway Administration does not recommend using those within 300 to 400 feet of another intersection, because it pulls your attention away from the traffic signals, and you start focusing on something else, and it can create bigger issues. So there's, it'd be, and there's also an inherent cost to even applying for these. It's typically not 100% cost share.
Well, I'm taking a look at what's in the guidelines for the grants, and those appear to be 100% grants. And I think basically, I don't know if we've got anybody within City Hall charged with looking at grants for various departments. I noticed that there's a noticeable absence of grant money funding in the CIP itself. It's basically TIF, tax revenue, or bonding. That's basically what we've got.
Actually, there's quite a few grant-funded projects that are in this. You may not notice them. West Fifth Street has got a STP urban funding.
Go ahead.
The I actually am going to be doing a interconnection project this year with the DOT. That's a grant-funded project. It was a 67% cost split where they're paying 67%. Well, I'll have a connection to my office with the traffic signals. We have several other grants. Trail project on the other road, that's a grant-funded project, as well as Lincoln Avenue is also a STP Urban, which is an 80-20 split.
Yeah, okay, well, I'd just like you to be aware of that, and I'd like you to take a look and sometime in the future to sit down and talk about how we might improve and make those intersections safer, or the crosswalks safer. Peach and Central Avenue.
Mr. Berg?
Yeah, I think Tom and Dan and others have done a good job of trying to find grant opportunities for some of the projects that Tom noted. Broadly speaking, some of the grant programs from years ago have kind of dried up or dwindled. You know, think about Homeland Security and some of those. And the other thing is, it is true, we used to have a grant person for, I think, 3 years, sort of a joint partnership with the school, if you remember. That individual moved on. We don't have that position. And we really don't have staff dedicated to finding grant opportunities. We try to use consultants when we can to uncover some of them. We keep like you do, keep an eye on the things that come from the league and elsewhere. But it is challenging to find some of them, I admit.
Alderman Spiros?
Thank you. I'm not going to talk about grants at all, but I did want to bring up something. I'm not sure who put together in this section the M&E 5-year fleet replacement plan, year 1, 2, where they literally go through and they describe every unit and all the miles. I've been asking for this for a couple of years, and I think it was partially kind of included last year, but I wanted to commend whoever did this year. This was very easy to read and made things a lot easier to understand what your replacement schedule is and why you're doing that. So whoever took the time to do that, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
yes, thank you, Chris.
That would be Chris, and he does a great job of it. He's done it for a couple of years, and it really does make it easier to follow where those dollars are going to go.
I got a great support staff that assists in this process. It's myself, the 2 assistants, the 2 mechanics, and our fleet supervisor that put this plan together, so.
Excellent, keep going, thank you. Next up, technology.
Yes, good evening. So the IT start on page 201, Adobe page 202. The first item that we have is the Microsoft Windows server license upgrades, because we are currently running the server 2012 R2. The license end of life support is 2023. So the item is to replace those licenses. Similarly, with Exchange Server, we are running the 2013 versions, and it expires on 2023. Next item is the Unitrans upgrades. After about 4 years of using Unitrans, we typically need to resize the box accordingly. So this is a plan out to 2025, and we put a dollar amount that we have been spending on that upgrades in the past. So although we may have to revisit this a year or 2 from now, because things might have changed by then. Cisco Firewall is the upgrade is the next items. We do use the ARPA fund for this upgrade. It's slated for this year yet, actually, for the upgrades. It's listed on the CIP for next year. It's just that by the time if we order it this year, we might get it by next year. The next line item is the network penetration test. We try to stay with the every other year schedule for the pen test. And then the next item is the wireless LAN controller and access point upgrades. This is also part of the ARPA fund. Again, it's listed as 2023. Technically, we plan to issue the order this year using the ARPA fund for that. The next item is the VMware VDI upgrades. As we upgrade the operating system for the server, we need to upgrade the VDI at the same time. Next item is the SharePoint upgrade. Again, that's planning out to the future 2026 as we are running the 2016 version of SharePoint. Then storage upgrade, we did an upgrade last year. Okay, what we have done is we split our SAN storage into two areas. So there's one area mainly is a high performance. And then there's this second, 2 more years later that we are going to be upgrading is focused mostly on the video storage. So it's high capacity, but slower performance. Then the next line item is the rugged mobile computers for the PD vehicles. We have 10 laptops that are inside the PD vehicles. These are more ruggedized computers. So after 5 years, they're up for replacement. Part of the reason is they need to be ruggedized. There's vibrations and extreme weathers in those vehicles. So these are more specialized computers for that. The next item is replacing the server room UPS. We inherited the UPS from the bank, and according to the vendor that we talked to, the UPS has actually been used for like roughly 15 years by now. So it's up for replacement in 2023. Last item is the EBS, Enterprise Business Software. This would be into year 3. For this software, it's somewhat near the tail end of the EBS. We did reduce the amount from 100 to 80, thinking that the number of modules that we still need is getting lesser and lesser. That's all I have. Any questions?
Mr. Hendler.
Thank you. Saying, I ran into this a couple of years ago where I wanted to communicate with one of my colleagues who was not on the council at the time. This was not a confidential item, but I did send it and it was intercepted by your staff. And my response from you was, it was a software package that we apparently purchased. Is this the network penetration test that prevents us being observed by the city?
I have to look back, but we use spam filtering software, so potentially, or the email encryption. So depending on what you were sending, sometimes software detection subject to errors. So if whatever you send, if the software thought you have sensitive information, it decided to block you from sending. And usually when it does happen, it will send you a notice that this message has been, blocked for whatever the reason.
Yeah, I not only got the message that it was blocked, but I also got a call from one of your employees. And from my standpoint, personal standpoint, I find this is sort of the big boy is watching, and I really don't like it.
Yeah, again, I just want to say that, none of us actually have time to watch the incoming or outgoing emails. It's just that all of this is done by software. Whoever write the AI, artificial intelligence in doing the detection, but as you know, sometimes, false positives do occur. So, and again, sorry about that.
Anyone else? Mr. Witzel.
Just a quick question for you. What is our approximate internet traffic regarding email? I mean, how many emails do we have running through the system on any given day?
I guess I don't track that, but I would suspect it would be into, the thousands.
Okay. Does that include the ones that are being blocked now through the new system?
Yes, I mean, the block one would be, typically would be a small percentage of the total.
Okay. Because I find that blocking software has been very helpful. I've gotten a whole lot less garbage in my inbox, so thank you on that one.
Anyone else? Thank you, Ing. Next up, UW
Thanks.
Stevens Point.
Good evening and thank you. For those of you that don't know who I am, I'm Brian Panzer. I represent UW Stevens Point, the Marshfield campus, through this process. I've worked quite extensively with a lot of you folks. Some of you I haven't. But I'd like, with your permission, to present our capital improvement program summary tonight. Beginning in 2023, we're requesting one project is replacement of the rooftop unit, which is above the commons, the food service area, and the new inclusive center. That unit is both a heating and a cooling unit. Was installed in 1997. We've had some issues with it, especially on the cooling side. So that is our first request, and our only request for 2023 is to replace that rooftop unit. Going into 2024, we have 3 requests. We're really focusing in this 5-year program on our HVAC requirements for fresh air, clean air, heating and cooling. In 2024, we're requesting the replacement of an air handling unit, which services the theater and the subsequent areas, the theater lobby, the black box, and part of the Laird wing. This unit was installed and is original to the building in 1971. So we were asking and have that replaced in 2024. Also in 2024, we're requesting the replacement of an air handling unit in the Felker building. That is original equipment into the construction in 1964. Both of the previous air handling unit I mentioned in this one, we've been having some capacity issues with it, some bearings, some shaft issues. So these are higher priority for us for replacement. This one again is in the Felker building. Felker building houses the Solution Center, which is the main hub for the students. It houses the administrative staff and then all of the staff that assists the students and the public when they come into our campus. And our third final project that we're requesting for 2024 is to do some work on our tennis courts, which are in need of some crack filling and some crack sealing. And then they would be resurfaced, repainted as part of this project. And also the practice wall that's on the north side of the tennis courts. It's a 3/4 inch plywood wall. It's starting to deteriorate and falling apart. That would also be part of this project along with the resurfacing of the tennis courts. In 2025, this project was actually originally budgeted for and was scheduled to be done in 2022. But as everybody has talked about, we did put it out pre-bid. It came in substantially higher than the funding would allow. So we stepped back from that project, put it into the CIP project, moving it ahead with the understanding that we would spend some funding to repair the existing chiller. This is a very important chiller for us. It provides the cooling for the library, the theater, the black box, the faculty offices, the lower level of the Laird building and part of the Laird, basically the west side of the campus. That chiller currently is a 2-stage, 200-ton chiller. One stage has failed. Actually, it failed 2 years ago. To repair that would be, it's estimated at least $30,000. So we've been getting along with the one side, spending a minimum of repair money and maintenance money to keep that one side running. Again, this was installed in 1997. Because of the importance of this chiller, though, like I said, we stepped back to see what we could do with the funding that was available in 2022. We have talked with Steve in the finance department from the city of Marshfield. We have talked with the finance people from Wood County. We have asked for a small amount of additional funding to get this project completed this year. That project is moving ahead now. We are taking a different approach on it. We're looking at some new and different technologies. We're actually reducing the size of that chiller, doing some more things with electronics on the new chiller, going from a 2-stage chiller to a 6-stage chiller. And all that means is that we're going to have the same capacity we have now, but we're able to basically come within budget of what's in there right now, 180,000, with a small addition from the city and the county if they agree to that. So long story short, this project that is requested in 2025 could actually be removed from the 5-year plan as of right now. Because as it stands, we are going to try and get that project done this year yet. The project was scheduled to be done in the spring of this year, but of course, because of the availability of HVAC equipment, like everything else, that unit would not be available until September. So we're looking at an October, November construction on that of this year yet. Then going into 2026, one request is to replace the existing ballasted roof over the connector. This roof was constructed with original construction in 2002. Our intent then is to remove the ballast roof and replace it with a fully adhered EPDM rubber roof, which we've been doing on all the roofs at the UW. We've been removing the ballast and putting in a 20-year warranted rubber roof. That's project number 1 for 2026. Another project for 2026 that we are requesting is just some general repairs and maintenance on our sidewalks, parking lot, and driveways. We request this at least once through a 5-year session of the CIP. This year, the commission actually on the last week's Thursday approved a project. We're going to be replacing some sidewalk in front of the Laird Theater entrance and doing some downspout work. We've had some issues with the sidewalk and it's been long overdue. So that project for this year is scheduled. That's with 2022 money. This project is requesting to do some similar work though in 2026. And then finally, a request in 2026. If you're aware, the UW campus houses about a 95-acre arboretum natural area. This funding would be to do some work on the gravel trails and some of the drainage areas. We've been doing quite a bit of work on the trails and the drainage areas through donations. And we're planning on possibly doing another project this year through donations. But this CIP project in 2026 would expand on that maintenance in the Arboretum. In 2027, then we have 2 projects. The first project is to replace some existing carpeting and some flooring in our Laird entrance, or Laird Theater entrance in the Upper Commons area. Both of these areas, the floor coverings that are in these areas are original with the construction. The Laird entrance carpeting is from 1971. The Upper Commons carpeting is from 1999. That carpeting would actually be removed and we'd be replacing with luxury vinyl tile to eliminate some of the spills and staining issues that we have in the Upper Commons. And then finally, this project, it is the athletic field area improvements. This is a comprehensive project. If you're familiar with the athletic field area, it houses the tennis courts, 2 baseball fields, and I believe now there's the Marshfield Parks and Rec Department are going to have 4 or 5 soccer fields out there. It's a joint area that we share with Marshfield Parks and Rec Department. It's been a very good cost-sharing project for us. We share the mowing cost with them, and they take very good care of our fields. They've actually stuck some money into some of the baseball fields out there. This project would resurface the parking lot that's out there. This project would also remove the existing wooden fence that's out there and install a chain link fence. We've had incidences where people have driven through the wood fence with their vehicles, gone onto the fields, done enormous amount of damage out there. And the real intent is, besides that, is if there are events or soccer games or baseball games going on, that even though a chain link fence may not stop a car or a vehicle totally, it would certainly reduce the risk of driving through a wooden fence. That's really one of the big positives to this project request that we have. And that would conclude, I guess, our request from UW Stevens Point to Marshfield campus in this CIP process. So,
Any questions for Brian? Mr. Paschal.
Brian, with all of these HVAC changes, is there a cost estimate on the savings that will result from replacing systems that are 25, 50 years old?
Yeah, one caveat on the utilities. The state of Wisconsin through UW system, they pay for all of the utilities. They pay for the electricity, they pay for the natural gas, they pay for the water, they pay for the sewer. So that's not a Marshfield Wood County cost. But like the chiller that we're going to be replacing this year with the new electronics on it, and we work with the DeSago system through Complete Controls. That's electronic controls on those. Obviously, with any new electronics, there is cost savings to the electricity. So they are really electrical savings that would be seen, but that would be saved from the state side. So,
Mr. Hendler.
Thank you. Hello, Brian.
hello, Mr. Hindler.
The amount that you show here, 595,000, is that the city's share?
That would be the city's share. That is
Okay,
correct.
so
Yes,
we got-
all of the costs that are shown, and I should have mentioned that, all the costs that are shown, because the UW campus buildings and infrastructure are owned 50-50 by the city and the county. The cost that I am showing that Steve has put into your manual would be 50% of the total cost of that project.
Okay, so you've got about 1.2 million to work with, right?
That would be correct.
Okay, thank you. I think you folks do a marvelous job with money, but I have just a statement on my part. You know, there were 13 centers at one time, and all the centers have been incorporated with four-year institutions throughout the state. And I believe our center is the one of two that's shared by the county and by the city, and the other one is Baraboo-Sauk, I believe.
I believe you're right. The rest of them would be specific to counties.
Right, and I've asked this once before, since is there any intention, you might communicate that to people up further down the line? I think the university and the state ought to be picking up all the costs because they are benefiting from the buildings and the land that's already sitting there. So they should bear the entire cost. That's just my own personal opinion.
And that's a very good point. I would like to mention that Michelle Bornke, who is our campus executive, she plans on making a presentation to this body like she did last year, sometime in September, after the enrollment numbers are in. And the current provost, Dr. Marty Loy, is stepping out of that. He was interim, and they're in the process of hiring a new provost. So Michelle wants to come with the new provost, whoever that individual is, and make a presentation to you folks on enrollment numbers and the public interaction that we have, the public rentals and all that stuff. And at that time, that would be an excellent question to ask them.
Well, I'm concerned about what they do. Don't get me wrong, but I'm more concerned about the dollars that are involved in so guys.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Brian. But before you leave the lectern, we would ask for a motion to remove project 405-4344, chiller replacement in 2022 from the CIP. Anyone make a motion, please? Wow, everybody jumps up. I love it.
We like the money.
Paschal makes a motion and seconded by Mike Fire. Any discussion? Any of the yeas? Vote, please.
Aye.
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 Oppose? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next and last up, and certainly not last up, is wastewater.
Good evening. Wastewater projects began on page 225 of the proposed CIP packet. First project is phosphorus removal improvements. This project is required in order to comply with a much lower phosphorus discharge limit mandated by the EPA. This limit takes effect in our next Wisconsin DNR discharge permit. Full compliance is required by September of 2025. Although our plant already achieves this low limit most of the time, it wasn't designed to reliably achieve it continuously. This project would add mixers and controls to improve biological uptake of phosphorus. These upgrades would be done in stages over the next few years. Next item, project vehicles and equipment. For equipment portion of that, we have the addition of a manhole televising unit to better evaluate manhole conditions. This is planned for purchase in 2023. For vehicle replacements, we have in 2024, replacement of our sewer televising van and trailer with one single truck. The existing inspection equipment would be reused and installed in this truck. For 2025, we have a replacement of our utility service pickup truck. This is a critical vehicle needed for lift station maintenance, snow plowing, hauling, and towing. In 2027, we have scheduled for replacement of a 2016 wastewater utility car. Next page, Lincoln Avenue Lift Station, upgrade of electrical controls. These controls are 43 years old, are becoming unreliable, and replacement parts are no longer available. We have slated for engineering in 23 with construction in 2024. Phosphorus removal disc filter is the next item. This is actually the second project needed to meet phosphorus limits. The first one that I already mentioned improves the biological uptake of phosphorus. This project adds filtration after the clarifiers to ensure phosphorus capture and removal. Engineering services in 23 with construction in 24 and 25. Next item would be replacement of two original 1976 vintage pumps at the Northeast Lift Station. This station pumps 1/3 of Marshfield's wastewater flow. Replacement is critical to maintain reliable service. Engineering in 23, construction in 24. Next is replacement of the treatment plant's large biosolids thickener in 2026. This machine will then be 26 years old and at the end of its service life. The intent is to replace it with two medium-sized thickeners for increased efficiency and redundancy. And that's the final project. All of these wastewater projects will be funded by wastewater utility user fees, not from the tax base.
Any questions?
Final item.
Mr. Wagner?
Have you already done the rate study to find out what it's going to cost to pay for to see if the rates are adequate for paying for these very large projects you've got going?
The rate study is reviewed every fall, and that'll be coming up later this year.
So they're going to take
yearly
into consideration for planning ahead for those other projects, or are they just going to do them year by year, rate study year by year?
Yes.
That was an either or.
Pardon me?
So are they going to do the rate study to address the whole 5-year plan at one time, or are they going to do it as just a separate rate study each year to see what the rates would be?
There's a standard rate study every year that's required
Yeah.
at around budget time.
I'm familiar with those. I just curious how, these are some larger numbers than I think we're used to seeing. That's why I'm curious how you're going to address those. I see Mr. Connect getting up.
Yeah, typically, it's just a one-year look at the rates and then an adjustment at that point. We have had some fairly large projects in our CIP plan for a number of years, and we have been building a little bit of a balance for these major projects. So
that's what I'm curious is, can we acquire a balance to pay for it?
we have been adding to our equipment fund, and we have a healthy balance there. So each year that's evaluated to see if the rates need to be increased. We've been fortunate that our revenues have been steady and we have an upward trend in revenue. So we have not had to raise rates significantly. In some years we could maintain a flat rate, but again, that's an annual review, and we don't really have a process to do a 5-year look at rates because there's so many variables. In a 5-year period, it'd be tough to project.
Thank you.
Mr. Witzel.
To Mr. Wagner's point, I think the fact that you have about 800,000 in 2023 and triple that the following year, I think is where the big concern is. And if we're setting aside a savings account, so to speak, to be able to absorb those bigger years, I think that's a great thing.
Anybody else? Mrs. Tompkins.
I would just like to say that I'm very proud of the work you guys are doing. When I went to visit, I was just so impressed. So thank you.
I would say the same thing. Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you very much for your report. And there ends number E, review proposed CIP projects by function. Number F, discussion on any council questions and suggestions for changes to the CIP. But before that, we would like Dan to come up and talk about projects not proposed in this list. Take it away, Dan.
Thank you. Yes, we've spent the last meeting and a half going over projects that are on the list. If you would flip to page 233 of the PDF or 232 in your hard copy binder, there's a list of projects that didn't make the cut, so to speak. So the way our process works is department heads all throw in their project requests. We enter them into the software, run some reports and generate a workbook, and then department heads sit down and we prioritize projects, and we actually make some changes before it gets to the council. And I wanted to make sure the council was aware of some of these other projects in case there was an interest in talking about those. So if you would flip to that page at 232 and 233, I just want to hit some highlights. So some of these projects, all we're doing is changing funding sources from debt to tax levy or room tax or whatnot, and the projects stay within the plan. But I would like to highlight some projects that have been moved back or even removed from the plan. So under the airport, you can see there's 2 projects there, the airport snow removal equipment building and the old terminal building demolition. I mentioned those when we went through the airport project, but those were actually moved back from the original dates. And what this does is aligns better with the Bureau of Aeronautics 6-year plan for our airport. I did mention last meeting that we're going through a facilities master plan update at the airport, and that may trigger some changes to our capital plan once that master plan is completed. But those are 2 projects on this list that were delayed with the staff prioritization. The next grouping there are cemetery projects. They try to do $15,000 of asphalt paving repair in the cemetery every year. And the original request was to do that in the odd years. So 3 of the 5 years of the plan would have had some work done to help balance funding. We reduced that to the 2 even years. So it was a net reduction of $15,000 for cemetery road maintenance. On engineering, there were several projects that got delayed to make the funding balance. I mentioned the citywide traffic modeling analysis, traffic signal modeling analysis, that was moved back 2 years in the plan. Vine Avenue reconstruction from 2nd to 4th had been moved back 1 year and is now in 2025. The Vine Avenue project from Depot to Arnold was also moved back 1 year, and now that's in 2028. And then as Nick pointed out, our annual adjustment is to move the Colonial Laird storm sewer easement back a year or two, and that happened this time again. So maybe next year we'll try to get it moved ahead. On the fire and rescue side, I think Pete mentioned that the Squad 1 replacement was already was initially in the plan for a brand new rig for $800,000, and they're looking at refurbishing that rig instead, and that reduced the amount required by $650,000. They had a request in for some training facility improvements, and that's a project that's joint with MSTC. And we pushed that out of the 5-year plan for now, until we can get a better feel for what that project looks like. The next one was a GIS emergency services pre-planning, essentially a GIS initiative to digitize all, not all, but significant building footprints so that the building plans are available to the responders to have available in their rig as they're approaching a scene. This money was to do outside services with some help from UW-Stevens Point for that GIS service. Our intention is to request a GIS assistant as an in-house position in the 2023 budget. So these outside services would not be necessary, with that assumption that we would have in-house capability of doing that in 2023. And then the last one under fire and rescue was the UTV and trailer that was talked about last year. We again decided that that could go to the unfunded status at this point, and maybe reconsider it at a future date. In the Parks and Recreation category, just one project that was recommended to be unfunded. This was the Oak Avenue Community Center gym floor that was to replace the wood floor in that building. It was moved to unfunded because the estimate was way too low for what needs to be done there, and that needs to be rescoped and price updated on that one. And then the Wildwood Park South parking lot was delayed 1 year and would now be in 2025. Under the police department, there was one project that was requested to update the HVAC controls to an automated control system. Again, with the uncertainty of that building, we decided that maybe it's best to hold off on that project till we know for more certain what might be the future of that building. And then in streets, we did move the tuck pointing project back 1 year, just in hopes of having a little more clarity on what's the future of that building. So those are projects that I just want to make you aware of, those that have been unfunded and those that have been moved back, in case there's any discussion on those items.
Thank you, Dan. Any discussion? Mrs. Tompkins?
I'm just wondering, the last meeting we had, Mr. Wagner asked that the CIP also have a rough estimate for a police station and a city garage. Would that fall under this? Things that aren't in the CIP?
I mean, it would be very rough at this point. We've talked about some of those things. We'd have to probably refresh those numbers. What we have in there for the city garage is $100,000 that Chris mentioned would be to further refine those cost estimates and get a little bit more detail on what that looks like. The PD we haven't really talked about in quite some time, so I don't know that I have a good number on that.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes, thank you. What my intent was to ask our financial consultant to blend in some estimate, even if the estimates are very rough at this time for some of those legacy projects, to blend them in and give us somewhat of a guideline of how we could squeeze those in, or how we can time them and put them in, so that we don't lose those projects. I think the thing that I'm most concerned about is that there are, for lack of a better term, outside events that are going on now. There are forces that are coming together that may not come together again for another generation if we don't act on some of these things. And I'd like the advice, I'd like you and the city administrator to basically give some rough estimates of the cost. We do have some, we've had one study for the police department. We've had one study for the city garage. I think the one that the county did, I believe that's one that they did. So we have some rough estimates that we can put there, and all we got to do is give him a timeline within the next 5 years or so, or maybe even 6 or 7 years, it depends. On, you know, you could do a couple of scenarios. But that would be very helpful. It would give us some hope that we're not going to, you know, a 5-year plan that says, we can't do anything for 5 years. We can't do anything aspirational for 5 years is a real downer. Our job here is to lead and inspire. And it's hard to do when you're saying we're not going to do anything. So, or don't make arrangements to do anything.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, because you and I did talk about that
Yes, we did.
the other day, and I wasn't sure where you're going with that question, but you're right. We need to give some direction to our financial advisor on where we'd like to see these major projects fit in, and then he will see what the debt picture looks like. And what you and I talked about, Alderman Wagner, is maybe trying to pencil in that city garage project, for instance, in year 4 or 5 of the CIP plan, and just see what that looks like. And we could do something similar with a number for the police station project. And if the numbers change, you know, of course, we'd have to adjust that, but at least to get a snapshot of what things might look like.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you again, Dan.
Thank you.
And again, we'll go back to discussion of any council questions or suggestions for the changes to the CIP. Seeing none, we'll go on to G. Consider recommendation to send CIP with any requested changes to the June 14th council meeting for final review and approval.
Can I throw something out first?
Yes,
and I
sir.
should have brought this up under discussion, I apologize. But at the very least, I think one was mentioned earlier about modifying the cost of the public participation platform project, that's project 235-8002, from 10,000, which was estimated at first, to 12,000, which has now been the re-estimate given to us by Communications Director Tom Laux. If we're going to keep that project in there, we probably should bump it up to 12,000, as that is now the new estimated cost of that project.
Mr. Wagner moves, second by Mr. Witzel. Any discussion? Seeing none, any ayes?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you.
Okay, so are we set then for the June 14th council meeting for final review and approval? Make a motion?
I make a motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Tompkins. Second? Mr. O'Reilly, any discussion? Mr. Witzel?
Are we going to have information from Dan regarding the underground electrical fair by then?
Yes, that is on my to-do list to have a recommendation ready for that meeting. So there would likely be one change at that time.
Thank you, Dan.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so seeing no more further, we'll make a motion to adjourn.
Nope, we got to vote on the other.
Nope, I'm sorry.
Vote on the last one.
Okay, we need to vote on the ayes?
Aye.
Nays? Okay, now motion carries. Time to adjourn. A first? Nobody wants to adjourn? Mr. O'Reilly? And Mr. Paschal. And there ends the meeting. Thank you, everyone.